Welcome to the Girls Abroad podcast with Jordy and Santi.
We've been living abroad for the last 2 years. We share our highs and lows, our tips and tricks, and life in our 20s.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Girls Abroad podcast. This episode is about the reality of moving abroad. If you feel like you've outgrown a place or the environment you're living in and you want to move to a new place and meet new people, move abroad.
If you have also felt like you are outgrowing the environment you are in, maybe this episode is for you.
In this episode, we're going to get into the pros and the cons of moving abroad, as well as how to avoid the lows. So let's start off with the pros. When you move abroad, you're exposed to a whole new set of opportunities that you wouldn't have if you had stayed at home. I celebrated Diwali at the Sikh temple this year. I would never have done that if I hadn't have moved abroad, I think.
We've also had Chinese New Year, so lion dances, pineapple tart.
There's a huge firework display in Singapore for all of the celebrations.
I had learned through the Chinese New Year celebration that there are lucky numbers that come out of a lion dance.
I didn't know that.
And apparently you should be using them for your lottery.
Wow.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, wouldn't have learned that back at home.
There's more opportunity moving overseas to travel than back home. You can go away for weekend trips. Singapore is very central. It's a travel hub. And whether you're living in Singapore or in Europe or any part of Asia, you're able to go away for those weekend trips. You can hop over to the next country easily. Whereas when you're living in a place like New Zealand, it's not as easy to do that kind of thing.
No. And it's easy because it's quick. It's easy because it's cheap. And in all honesty, there's a lot of public holidays here that we don't celebrate at home.
No.
So we do have those 3-day weekends. And if you fly to Bali, it takes you 3 hours and it may set you back about $500.
You could do it for less. If you book it ahead of time, $300.
So of course, the opportunities are endless here. And especially in Southeast Asia, we have Vietnam super close. We have Laos, we have Thailand, Bali, all of Malaysia, Indonesia. Yeah, there's just so much to choose from here for such short, cheap trips.
And you can go to these different places as well for different things. You can get your clothes made in Vietnam. You can go surfing in Bali. You can explore the culture in Malaysia.
The world is your oyster.
The world is your oyster.
Another important pro of moving abroad has been stepping out of your comfort zone. So a lot of the time you are thrown into a new environment. You have to make friends. You have to build up relationships with your colleagues. You have to find what you like to do because you're now away from your normal.
It can be really uncomfortable when you first move overseas. You might feel a bit isolated, but there's kind of a beauty in that because you have so much time to invest in yourself and you kind of have to start from zero again. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be interested in other people, meet new people, join communities, and you've got to find new spots. So you're forced to explore the surrounding areas, whereas when you stay at home, you're comfortable. You know what you like, you know where you want to go, and you know what works. Whereas you've got to figure that all out from the beginning again when you move overseas.
And it's exciting. I think that's the really cool thing about this pro. You never know what you're going to find out about yourself.
I think that it's inevitable that you're going to grow as a person when you move overseas. Yes, you're exposed to a new place, but you're also forced to kind of look within. You have no choice.
Yeah, you got nobody.
You've got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It also builds resilience. Like, I've been to the hospital twice since moving here, and it's like midnight. I'm hobbling to the emergency department, and it builds resilience. You've got yourself. You've got to tell yourself you're okay. You've got this. And now I feel like I can face new challenges.
I don't know about you, but that's a big deal.
It's a big deal in a new country.
You don't have your mum booking your doctor's appointments for you. You're stuck. And washing, is your washing done on the right day?
What's the temperature like outside? Is it monsoon season? Are your clothes going to dry outside and have a funny smell because it's so freaking humid outside?
Yeah, or are they going to get drenched because it rains every single day?
Yeah.
These are such pros of moving abroad.
We're making them sound like cons, but in the long term, they're pros. Yeah, it's character building.
It is.
Do it for the plot.
So yeah, we are growing. as human beings,
Mhm.
as women, and looking back to where I was and maybe you were 2 years ago, we were different people. And we have
Completely.
found such interesting things about ourselves that we love.
Another pro is that you're exposed to different cultures, you're exposed to different ways that people live. It was definitely an adjustment for me, adjusting to the Singapore culture as opposed to the Kiwi culture. They're hugely different, but you kind of learn to adapt to your environment in a way.
It's just that our cultures value different things.
Yes, exactly.
And we are a very personable culture back in New Zealand. It's really easy to strike up a conversation, but here, people are a little bit more reserved and keep to themselves.
And I mean, we don't get half as much done back home as they do here. So they're a lot more efficient here, which comes with the reserved side. And it works. It works for the country and the people.
Yeah. And not only Singaporeans, but in a expat community like Singapore, you do learn a lot about different people, a lot about different cultures and the way that they live. And you think about our classrooms, we would have
at least 10 different nationalities.
Yes. Yeah. And at our school, probably 30 different nationalities.
I think it's refreshing. Yeah, I remember back home, everybody is pretty much Kiwi. And even if your ethnicity background is different, you've kind of adopted that Kiwi culture as well. Whereas here, it seems everybody keeps their own culture in a way, which is a huge plus to Singapore.
Absolutely.
It's refreshing to kind of open up your world to see how other people live, not just the way that you've been living your entire life.
Yeah. Being challenged on what we believe is right and true and the exact way to do things.
You subconsciously take on the habits of other cultures. You see what you like and you adopt those habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you're staying home, you only really know your one way, the Kiwi way, for example.
Which isn't bad.
No.
But it's so nice to have the different ways as well. And another pro, of course, with moving overseas is that you're most likely moving here for a job opportunity that's giving you and providing you with a higher income. And with a higher income, of course, comes more travel, maybe a higher savings potential. And if you're really onto it with your money, you can do both. So you can travel, you can still see the world, you can do events and activities around the place, as well as saving.
Sometimes it feels like you can't have both in New Zealand because it's so far away. You've got to choose one. Either you're staying put at home and you're saving, or you're traveling and you're spending all of your money. Whereas when you move overseas, you get to do both because like we said before, traveling is cheaper. It's more accessible. You can go for a quick weekend trip. In New Zealand as well, you feel like you have to make the most of it because everything's so far away. So it turns into a 2, 3, 4 week trip. Whereas when you're living more central in the world, you can just go for a shorter amount of time and spend less money. Also being overseas, I feel like your money just goes a lot further than it would if you were back home. And when we say that, we can only compare it to New Zealand, really. The cost of living in New Zealand is really high right now. And I found that moving overseas, your money just goes a lot further, regardless of how well you can save. Moving overseas is just, it's easier. Moving in might cost a bit at the start, but once you gain some momentum and you get going, you can build your savings pretty quickly and travel and enjoy life at the same time.
And in many places overseas, the tax is lower. So you could be earning the same amount of money, but you're literally pocketing more because New Zealand's tax, insane.
It's tough in New Zealand right now. So to recap, you're exposed to more opportunity than you would back home.
Most likely a higher income or savings potential.
More travel opportunities, and you're exposed to new cultures. Get out of your hometown.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
And with that comes the cons of moving abroad. Jordy, more than me.
Well, it has been a roller coaster of a ride, and I think it really is inevitable that you're going to change, and the people around you are possibly going to be upset that you changed. And it can be hard. What's really tricky is that you feel misunderstood. Nobody knows what you're going through. Nobody knows the ups and downs of moving abroad. And they kind of just assume that, oh, she's changed because she's earning more money or she's traveling to this country.
it's inevitable that you'll change. And so it's a very common fear that when you go home, you wonder whether it'll be the same or not. And talking to my friends that also have moved overseas, we all share that kind of similar fear. And I think that moving abroad is an amazing opportunity for sure. And I think that maybe people might perceive it to be this glitz and glam fancy life, and that you've completely moved on. But you can't just simply let go of the last how many years had you spent in your hometown? You can't just let it go, and it doesn't automatically switch off when you move overseas. Like, a piece of your heart is still at home, and it takes some time to let that go, and it takes some time to put in that effort with friends as well. That is another difficult thing about moving overseas, is if you want to keep those friendships going, remind them that you're still thinking of them, you still value the friendship. We just have some distance between us physically. Yeah, there are those great friendships where they're really low maintenance and you can call them once a year or every few months and it's like no time has passed, there's no resentment. But with other friendships, you do have to kind of keep it up. You have to put in effort. You have to send them a little photo update or a meme or a TikTok.
And you mentioned not being able to switch off, but the same thing is when you return home, you can't just switch back on.
That is so true.
Right?
Yeah, I even found when I went back home for the holidays, for the Christmas holidays, I did feel really out of place.
Your conversations are now different and you're wanting to talk to people about different countries you've been to, your travel aspirations. And when you say you've changed, your goals have changed as well. And what you want in life, what you want in a partner, what you want in a friendship, and your future is different.
When you have different conversations, your mindset changes, your habits change, your patterns change, and your outlook changes.
Amen, sister. Santi is full of wisdom today.
Probably one of the hardest things about moving overseas is that it is so isolating. And I think that if you're moving somewhere where you don't know anybody, this is another inevitable part of moving overseas. You're going to change, but you're also going to feel isolated at some point or another, and potentially for a long time. You also feel really ungrateful, I think, when you feel isolated overseas because you've been given this amazing opportunity. You are exposed to new people and places, and the fact that you still feel isolated, you feel bad about that.
There is also a little bit of resentment deep within yourself, kind of questioning, was this the right move?
Yes, I can relate to that big time. You know, life back home, you knew what that was like. Whereas you move overseas and suddenly you don't have any clue where you're going. You don't know where you're going to be in a couple years' time. You don't know who's going to be in your community because when you're in the overseas expat community, it's transient. People are coming and they're going constantly. So that can be a really isolating time.
And with that comes a lot of time thinking within yourself. And if you're anything like me, you're an overthinker. The resentment feeling, but there's also that feeling of guilt because you have left a life behind at home. That kind of plays on your mind as well.
You've got a lot of time to think about yourself, and I don't think that it is a good thing to have so much time to think about yourself. I think that it is important to think about the people around you, but when you don't know anybody around you, all you're left to do is to think about yourself.
Another con is that it can be expensive to move. You are literally uplifting your life, shipping it across the world in however many suitcases, and plonking yourself into a new place.
Yeah, I think even if you are a person that budgets and you are very good with your money and you can be frugal, no matter what, it's going to cost a lot of money.
And I guess you've got that pressure of travel. It's a good pressure, don't get me wrong, but you see other people traveling and you realize how close you are to everything. And you're like, I really don't want to miss this opportunity. Yeah, it takes a while to kind of build back up, but it is an expensive move.
It's hard not to take every single opportunity to travel as well because there are more public holidays. You feel like you want to go away every single time, and that's going to cost a lot of money. And staying home in the holidays at first when you move overseas, it feels really weird to stay where you are. So you do end up going overseas. Then you get tired though, like I did. And you actually look forward to staying in the country during the holidays. But for the first year at least, it is expensive.
In our next episode, we will be outlining a little bit more about the specific expenses for a teacher moving abroad specifically to Singapore, I guess. So if you're wanting to know more about that, you can wait till episode 3. However, I think that kind of rounds up our cons.
Moving overseas, you are bound to feel the lows. They are definitely going to come at some point. The best thing that I've found is building your own toolkit. So you're pulling upon the habits that you had back home. It could be exercise. It could be grabbing coffee on a Sunday morning. It could be going into the park to have a picnic. Any of those things to pull on when you're feeling a little bit low. Those habits and familiarities are going to help you kind of push through.
You've got to build your routine, and you've got to slowly build your routine. So when we say that you've got all this time to think about yourself, you've got to think, what is it that builds up my day around work? So you need a routine outside of your job to ground yourself. So for example, are you someone who wakes up nice and early to go to the gym or go for a walk? Are you someone who cooks your breakfast, or are you someone like me who rushes out the door? And you've also got to think about an after work routine. Are you swimming down at the pool? Are you reading a book?
Don't think that you're going to move overseas and every single aspect of your life changes. I had a call with my dad when I moved overseas when I was trying to figure it out. And he said to me, when the dust settles, life is pretty much the same everywhere you go. So don't think that you're going to move overseas and you're not going to suddenly go to the gym or whatnot. You have to pull those habits back in. Live your life exactly the same as you are back home to start with, and then bring in new pieces. Which leads us to the next thing, which is take it slow. Don't rush. Don't feel like you have to rush into making a community. Don't feel like you have to be achieving this and feeling exactly how you felt back home, because that'll burn you out very fast. You're already in a new environment. Your brain is taking on a whole lot of new information every second of the day. So just take it slow.
That's probably our biggest word of advice.
Quick fire 5. 5 countries, 3 adjectives.
Boom, boom, boom. You're going to start.
Bali, vibes, people, surf.
Japan, ramen, cute, culture.
Spain, vibrant, people, architecture.
Croatia, sail, fun, happy.
Portugal, sunsets, chill, pretty.
New York, iconic, Broadway, gritty.
Sri Lanka, laid back, rural, beaches.
Greece, sunset, history, gyros.
Egypt, chaotic, history, fun.
Dubai, lush, outrageous, brunches.
And that brings us to the end of our second episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you for episode 3.
Peace
out.